Viruses, spyware, and worms. Oh my. So today we're going to talk about an important and really practical topic, right? Malware. Malware, computer viruses, hackers, getting into your system. These are some of the most common questions I get from students every semester. So malware is a really big umbrella. It comes from that Latin root mal, which means bad, like malicious. And it's malware, so bad software. Anything that's put onto your computer with malicious intent. And that umbrella covers a lot of different types of programs, right? We have spyware, which essentially tracks what you're doing online or what you're doing on your computer and reports it back to somebody for whatever reason they may have. There's also adware, which displays ads that you can click on, and sometimes they sort of keep pestering you to click on them in order for somebody to make money off you clicking on those fake ads, right? There's also viruses. Now we tend to think of viruses as a different thing, but viruses are really just a type of malware, and they have something specific in common, right? They self-replicate, which is why we call them viruses. They act like viruses in the real world. They can spread from computer to computer on USB drives or whatever. And so all these different types of malware and viruses are out there, and you need to protect your computer from them. Now, the reason people create viruses, there's lots of different ones. When I was younger, the reason people created viruses was primarily vandalism, right? It was just sort of a, haha, look, you've got a virus now. Maybe they destroy some bits of information on your computer. It was sort of more of a less sophisticated time, right? But now, people make viruses in order to make money. There's lots of different ways of making money using viruses. One of the most common is through something called a botnet. A botnet is when your computer gets a virus that sits in your computer and listens for instructions on the internet from somebody, right? A bot herder is what we call them, or you can just call them a hacker. And that your computer now is essentially a zombie. It listens to instructions from that hacker and will execute whatever they say to do. This is a really common way to, for instance, send spam messages. If you need to send spam advertisements, that's illegal in the United States. So the way you would do it is to contact somebody who runs a botnet, who has infected a bunch of machines with his virus, and then can use that botnet to send spam messages, to try to, bombard one particular server with requests until it eventually shuts down, whatever he wants to do with it. So viruses used to be sort of vandalism, but they've become a form of profit for a lot of people who don't really have a whole lot of morals. Now, there are a lot of different ways of getting a virus onto your system. One of the most common is accidentally or maybe purposely double-clicking on an attachment that you receive in an email. This is sort of the classic example. And unfortunately, it's still in use because it still works. People accidentally click on things. And usually the email will have some sort of a story behind it. Make sure to double click on this because there's an update to your system or something like that, right? It's usually a lie. But by double clicking on something, you're essentially executing a program that was sent to you from somebody you don't know. And that's usually a bad idea. And it's a really quick and easy way to get a virus onto your system. Now, there are some other ways. One is downloading movies and music illegally. There's something called a Trojan horse. The idea being that, kind of like the story of the old Greek myth of the Trojan horse, I may give you something that you want, and so you'll accept it into your system, something like, Kanye West's new album, or whatever the new blockbuster movie of the summer is. And so you download it because you want that thing. And what you don't realize is that hidden inside is a little bit of code that is now going to be executed on your system and will infect your system so that maybe I can control it through a botnet, or maybe I can do some sort of malicious thing with it, right? So you have to be careful when you're downloading stuff from the internet and make sure that you're only downloading from reputable sources. There's another way of getting a virus onto your system, and that's through USB drives. USB drives are incredibly convenient. Almost every student has one on them. And you just plug them into the machines on campus, and then you plug them into your machine at home, and you plug them into some other machine. You want to hand a file to your friend, so you plug it into their machine. And viruses can get attached to that USB drive, infect the USB drive, and then you're spreading that virus now to every system you plug it into. The problem is actually so bad that on most US military bases, USB drives are no longer allowed on the base. It is a huge security vulnerability and something that you should probably think about when you're using your USB drive on campus. We have had a few labs that have had some infections. So now to the practical part. How do you actually protect your computer from viruses? Well, kind of the most obvious way is to run antivirus software. There's lots of brands out there, and people have sort of feelings that one brand is better than another, and they'll say that this one's terrible and you should use this one, and I don't really care about the brand, all right? There's lots of great ones out there. Those conversations will usually involve names like AVG, Avast, Norton, McAfee. But honestly, Windows has a version that's free just for using Windows. It's called Windows Defender. And it's a solid choice. And it's already on your system if you use Windows. It's completely free to use. There is no pay version. And so it ends up being a great choice if you just sort of want some quick and easy protection. The important thing is not so much the brand you choose, but your virus definitions. Right? That's how an antivirus protects your system. It recognizes certain signatures of viruses. And so when it sees a program with one of those signatures on your computer or trying to access your computer, it will then try to block that program, quarantine it, and try and remove it from your system. Right? It protects you based on these signatures. Well, the virus that you're most likely to catch is going to be the newest virus. It's the emerging threat that you have to worry about because that's the one that most people don't have protection against. And so it spreads the most easily. Viruses that are older, there's usually enough systems out there running antivirus that have that definition that it's not going to spread as easily. And so just like real viruses, the one you have to worry about is the new one. And so to protect your system, you really need to update your viruses or update your virus definitions as soon as possible. If you were to update your virus definitions every night while you're sleeping, I would not consider you to be paranoid. In fact, that might be a really good idea, or at least check to see if there is an update. And the nice thing about using a product like Windows Defender that's so much a part of Windows is that those definitions get updated along with all your other programs in Windows. The second way to protect your computer is through a firewall. Now, a firewall can be a piece of hardware, although that's usually for bigger businesses. On a personal level, it's probably some software that's either running on your computer or on the router that's attached to your network. And what a firewall does is it looks at logical ports. Logical ports are sort of channels that your computer uses for communication. Different types of communication arrive on different channels, different logical ports. And so it sort of looks and says, hey, you know what? Here are some ports that are for really old purposes, things that you're not actually using. So I'm going to go ahead and close those ports, turn them off, and I won't respond to anything that's trying to communicate on those ports. So it looks like you don't even exist. Whereas other ports that you actually do use, it'll leave open because you need those to communicate. But even with that, it can sit and check and say, now this message that's coming back from the internet, did you actually request that bit of information? Or is that just sort of coming from some stranger that you didn't actually request it? If that's the case, then it can block that communication. It can block potential problems before it happens. And so that's the idea of a firewall. It sort of sits between your system and the internet, and it looks at stuff coming in and out. Both Mac OS X and Windows come with firewalls sort of pre-built in. You just have to turn them on. In Windows, it's Windows Defender again. So just from the start screen, type Defender. You'll find the information for both antivirus and how to turn on that firewall. Another great way to protect your computer is to update your software. Most people think of software updates in terms of bug fixes. Oh, there was a problem and they released something to fix the bugs. But I don't really have a problem right now. The computer seems to be working fine, so there's no reason to update the software. That could not be further from the truth. The fact is, most of these updates have to do with security vulnerabilities. They also have bug fixes, but The security vulnerabilities are sort of the important part in terms of security. That Microsoft is constantly finding new, holes in their security, new ways of using exploits within the software to gain access to your computer. And so they try to patch those problems. And they do very quickly and on a regular basis. But that doesn't really help you unless you actually download and install the patch, right? That's the software update process. It fixes bugs, and it also closes a lot of these vulnerabilities that get discovered. And so don't think of software updates as something that you only have to do when you experience a problem on your computer. Think of it as something you should do as soon as possible, all the time. Constantly be checking for updates. Your system can actually be set up to do it automatically, and it'll download and install the updates while you're sleeping, which is probably the best idea ever. Because that's going to keep your computer safe from those vulnerabilities. There's a lot of them out there, and so it's best to get them patched up as soon as possible. And my final recommendation for protecting your computer is to back up your system often. Now, we've talked about backup just in terms of data loss, right? If your hard drive fails, you need to have your computer backed up. Your computer has all of your photos, all of your, all these things that really, really matter to you. And so you need to have it backed up in case a hard drive fails. But backup also provides you a great restore point in case things get really bad. Having a backup can be a great tool when it comes to solving a problem with a virus. Let's face it, there's new viruses coming out all the time. And even if you update your virus definitions nightly, there's always going to be the chance that you're going to be patient zero for the new virus, right? That you're going to be the first one, or at least one of the first ones, to catch that new virus. And if that happens and your system suddenly is, pretty much wiped, data destroyed, maybe you don't have access to something, it's really nice to be able to turn off the machine, boot from a CD or from, the recovery partition on your hard drive, and restore to what you had yesterday. The more often you back up, the less you lose when that happens. Just having that, it gives you that option of saying, you know what, I can't solve this problem. This virus has really just rattled my system. But you know what, I can just restore to yesterday's system. And if I do that, then all I lose is whatever I did this morning. And that's not that bad a loss. It's certainly a lot better than not having a backup and potentially losing all of your data to a virus. And so lastly, you're probably thinking, well, that handles my computer, but what about my other devices? Do I have to worry about viruses on my smartphone? I wish I could tell you that you didn't. But the fact is, mobile viruses are sort of an emerging trend right now in security. And we're beginning to find more and more viruses that are specifically designed to attack mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, and the like. Samsung phones that use the Android operating system already come with antivirus built in on a lot of their models. And that's just because they sort of acknowledge that this is going to be an issue moving forward. iPhones and iOS applications are somewhat more secure just because of sort of Apple's controlling nature, right? Apps having their own sandboxes and everything sort of being closed so that you can only download apps from the official app store that have been digitally signed, things like that. They tend to make it a more secure system. But if you have jailbroken your iPhone, and if you don't know what the word jailbroken means, ignore that I said it, pretend it doesn't exist, you're better off not knowing, right? But if you have jailbroken your iPhone, you don't have those protections. And so, sure, you get some benefits from the jailbreaking. You can download some stuff for free, but just remember that when you download that stuff for free, some people offer things for free because they're just nice guys and they just want to hear you say thank you. And some people give you stuff for free because they're getting something out of it. And they've got some malicious intent. And it's really hard to know who's who. And so if you are one of the few people out there that have a jailbroken iPhone, just know that you may actually be the most vulnerable of all. Regardless, smartphone viruses are something that you're going to have to deal with in the future. And probably every platform is going to find a solution to try and protect your devices from mobile viruses. It's because your smartphone is a really personal device. When you think about it, it's got a GPS chip on there that can actually locate you physically in the world at any time. If somebody had access to your phone, they would know where you are and where you've been, how long you were at some place, what your habits are. And that can be kind of creepy, especially when you think of your smartphone as a camera. Most people use it to take pictures of their loved ones, their family members, their friends. All of that information is now potentially something that a hacker could have access to, as well as any sort of credit card you have tied to apps that are located on your phone. Your smartphone is sort of a big honeypot of personal information, and because of that, it's always going to be a target. And so in future, just pay attention. Like I said, there's not nearly as many viruses out there for smartphones as there are for other devices, right? For your computer at home. But that may not be the case in 5 years. And I'm probably going to have to update this lecture faster than I would think. For right now, just stay on top of it. Pay attention. Kind of keep your ear out for news about smartphone viruses and about ways that you can protect your smartphone. I'm glad Samsung is providing a solution. I hope that Apple provides a solution in future as well, because smartphone mobile viruses are definitely something we're going to be paying attention to for a while in the future. And so hopefully with those tips, you feel a little bit more confident using your computer online. The fact is, computers are cool because they can connect to other machines. They can connect you to other people. It's those connections, the network itself, that has made computers powerful, right? That it's what we use computers for. But with it also comes vulnerabilities. By connecting to another machine, you're leaving yourself a little bit vulnerable. But if you know how to protect yourself from the most common threats, right, you can at least feel a little bit safer. And that's really all that matters. What matters is that you can walk out and feel confident that your computer is going to be safe as you sort of find all the great things there are out on the internet.